Welcome to the MVP show. This time we have got James Novak, or Jim, who's just received his MVP award earlier this year, about 6 months ago. He joins me and we get to know him, and he works in around the US federal government. That's the type of work he's into. But great story about becoming an MVP. Full show notes can be found if you visit nz365guy.com/123. Now let's get on with the show. There's a knife in my heart and a storm. Jim, welcome to the MVP show.
How you doing?
Good, mate. Good to have you on here. We've, done a bit of playing around with the technology this morning, but we're good to go.
It's all part of the learning process, right?
The learning process. So is it Jim or James? I see that on your MVP profile, you've got Jim and James. But then on your Twitter profile, it's James.
So Jim's fine. I forget what I'm typing in different places. Depends what email I use and all that. But James makes me sound really smart. So I like that sometimes. But Jim is fine.
It's not like James 007.
Yeah. It depends on the customer. So
you've been an MVP for what? 9 months? 10 months?
6 months.
Six months. Wow.
I was first of the year. Yeah. So now I think now that the renewal wave for mid-year is over, now I get to start panicking about the upcoming months. So it's been a good 6 months. I've been learning a ridiculous amount from everybody involved.
I think some people struggle to understand that Microsoft is a metric-based organization. Everything is measurable. Everything is trackable. And so as MVPs, you can do all the kumbayaing you want out in the world, in the community, but if there's not a paper trail to it, Microsoft can't validate that you can come back next time, and I think this is what some people are kind of struggling with. They need a paper trail.
Well, it's nice too, because it forces you to think about what you're doing and make sure that you can track it, make sure that it's measurable. And honestly, you approach it a little bit differently, I think, because I'm going to present somewhere, I want to make sure that it's, if somebody goes to review it, it's in good form and it's well received and all that. So yeah, I think it's not a bad thing. It's not just for administrative sake. It's also good for us to organize things. I feel like. Yeah,
I totally agree. It makes you rationalize, where you invest your time. If you could do it 3 different ways, 5 different ways, really, there's probably 20 different ways you could spend your time. And you've got to work out, what works for the way you kind of contribute, and also what is driving value to the community, So.
No, I totally agree, and that's actually been one of the challenges I've personally had, and I'm amazed that people like yourself who put out so much content. I don't know if you actually sleep or not. The amount of stuff you guys put out and the live sessions you do. It's not just whenever you have time. You're scheduling these things around the community schedule too. And my struggles is I feel like, oh man, I got to keep up. I was joked about when I got the award email, I was like, oh, I'm really smart. I'm the top guy here. And then about 10 minutes later, I realized, oh my God, what am I doing? I know nothing, and I feel like I start seeing what everybody's doing and I feel like I know nothing. But if you have to turn it into a challenge and a chance to learn something from the community as opposed to feeling like you have to be top dog. And I think that's something I waver between, like, oh my gosh, I have to do everything. Then I realize, well, that doesn't help anybody, including myself. So the process has been good. It's been definitely a learning experience. And I go through those ups and downs of panic and having bits of confidence. And so.
Yeah. I think really you've got to measure yourself against yourself, not against somebody else, right? Everyone brings their unique art, you got here because you're doing something awesome, right? And so to maintain is to carry on doing that awesome stuff. And the more you see, the more you get exposed to, the more you try new things and pivot and as you create art, right?
I totally agree. It's funny you say that because I talk to my stepkids and they're getting up there. As oldest is just graduated high school, going off to college, and we talked about exactly that. So it's funny you have to listen to your own advice too. Because I told them, I said, don't look at everybody else around you because you're always going to lose. There's always going to be somebody better than you, smarter than you, bigger, taller, stronger, whatever. Whether you're in academics or sports or art or whatever. Just measure yourself against you yesterday. Are you improving? So it's funny you see that. I'm like, I should follow my own advice.
Yeah, I tell you what. This morning I was listening to a TED talk, and what I loved about this guy said, the way we're kind of driven in business, industry, in life is that when you achieve a goal, you just set another goal, right? You go up again. And he said the problem with it is you basically just set a cycle in your brain of never getting to a point of happiness because you don't celebrate long enough. You're on to the next thing. And here's a psychologist done a whole bunch of research, and he came up with how to create lasting positive change in your life. And there's basically 5 things. If you do them, you can create a lifetime of happiness, and they're not hard. They're quite simple things.
Yeah. Well, and again, it's all a matter of perspective too. It's how you approach it. It's your view of what you've just done, and I totally agree. I feel like whether it's a blog post or a project or a presentation, on the MVP side of things, like I don't have to top that. That's just something I've done. It could be something. It doesn't have to be this super spectacular thing. Other people might see it as a really big contribution. I got a few comments recently on a blog post that was really nothing. Was more just talking about a feature. It was the solution tracking, and it was pretty straightforward. I referenced some documentation, but it's something that somebody hadn't seen before. They gave me a very nice comment. They said it was very helpful, and I was like, that's pretty cool. That's rewarding, and it doesn't have to be this groundbreaking thing. And that gets back to comparing to yourself. You want to be improving, you want to be learning and expanding, not necessarily topping yourself. Growing, I guess, is a phrase, a little bit overused phrase, but it's very true. What session was that, by the way? Was it? I saw a couple of sessions by a really good psychologist talked about happiness. Wrote a whole book on it, and it's fascinating when you step back and look at how we process what goes on in our life about satisfaction and happiness. And it is, like you said, to the MVP thing, it just drives you to do more. And you need to approach it a certain way to keep going and not be overwhelmed. And also not just not get stale too. You want to make sure you're putting out good stuff. Yeah.
The session was called the happy secret for better work. So the happy secret to better work. So if you search for that on TED, you'll get it. But there's 5 things were 3 gratitudes every day. Speak them out. And the whole thing around this is that if you start looking for the positive in your life, you'll start training. And he goes, do this for a month. And what will happen is you start to program your brain to look for the good in life, where he said our current society looks for the wrong. And he said, what you've done, you've trained your brain to look for the negative. And he said, if you're going to flip it around, you actually need to habitually look a minimum of 3 things a day in the last 24 hours that you have gratitude for. The next one is journaling about the good things, right? So basically you're starting, because he said, what happens when you journal them, you relive them again. So what you're just journaling what happened. What are those 3 things? Write them down. The next one is exercise, right? Which is, we've heard it everywhere, but the whole thing is it doesn't have to be a full exercise regime. The fact is just consistent, better, going for a long walk or something like that. Meditation was his 4th one. And I tell you what, meditation, I reckon, is probably in the last 2 years transformed my life. I meditate 10 minutes a day. I try to do it 7 days a week. Every now and again, I track it. I've got an app that I track, consistently, but 10 minutes. I just have an app called, the meditation app is, what's it called? It's an English voice. It is Headspace. So very simple for anybody starting out on a meditation journey. It's not a woo-woo or anything like that. If you break meditation down, it's actually purely turning off the noise in your mind. And we live in a world where we're constantly barraged to have, multiple noise streams, whether it's ad, media, relationships, everything all the time. And what meditation does is teaches you to just silence, the constant chatter in your mind and create some relief. And then the last one is one random act of kindness a day. So those 5 things, like, and you look at them, right? You would say, hey, this is not going to smash, my day. This is not going to take a lot of time out my day. In fact, if you looked at the 3 gratitudes, journaling, exercise, meditation, the only one that takes a lot of time in that is really the exercise, like depending on what length you want to dedicate to it. The rest could all be done in half hour.
Well, right, but even the exercise doesn't have to be, as you said. It just be, and in the industry we're in, I mean, it's absolutely mandatory, and I'm very guilty of it myself, of sitting here too much. And well, you realize, like, I played sports in high school and college, and I always feel like unless I go and do a 2-hour hardcore thing, that I'm not exercising, and that's just silly. It's like, go walk the dog. and honestly, that's part of the meditation too. My wife has been doing meditation for quite a few years, and I'm terrible at it. And you described exactly the way she describes it. It's exactly what it is. And it sounds so simple, but it's so hard to do. Like, walk from one room to the next in your house without your phone in your hand looking at something, right? And I'm totally guilty of it. So that's really, I definitely have to look that up. That's very cool. Well, and honestly, you think about how it affects not just for happiness. I mean, if you want to be objective about it, because some people don't really think about meditation. It's like, oh, well, that's not really, that's kind of like you said, a woo-woo thing, right? But think about it. When you're working and we're being creative and we're building something, whether it's, again, to the MVP thing or your day-to-day job or art or whatever, half of, the job is focus. And focus in many ways is removing the distractions, allowing you to concentrate. And that's meditation, if you want to think about it. People sit and listen to music, and that's a form of meditation, right? The music takes me away. Like, that's meditation, So you find your own method of it, and it applies.
Yeah. No, so good. So tell me, you live in where is it? Washington, is it?
Yeah, just south of Washington, D.C. We're in Northern Virginia technically, but we're about 15, 20 minutes from downtown D.C., depending on the traffic.
So what, are you close to the FBI, or what is that octagon building called? What is it called? The CIA?
The Pentagon.
The Pentagon.
Yeah. Yeah, I drive by it every day almost. Yeah, it's really neat. It's actually, as much as we read about politics and the frustrations that some people have on whatever side of the spectrum you're on, driving through that kind of stuff, it is kind of cool to step back and realize, like, man, people come from all over the world to see this place. And I'm getting annoyed at the traffic. It's kind of like you have to step back and look around. I do a lot of federal work, so I work downtown a good bit and in the area. Yeah, so we're right in the middle of it. But yeah, drive by the Pentagon every day, and it's a little intimidating. I was sitting in traffic, and I hear this loud noise, and I look to my right, and I see these huge helicopters sitting on top of the Pentagon building, like aimed right at me. I'm like, oh, good morning. a little scary, but yeah.
Wow. So how did you end up becoming an MVP? Kind of, what were you up to? What were you getting into that kind of got you on people's radar?
Well, I've been doing. It's funny. I had to sort of step back and think about that recently, because I've had some people talk about it, and it's kind of it was kind of a conscious decision and kind of not. I've been doing dynamics work since like 2009, 2010. So for a few years, and I worked with some MVPs. In fact, some of the people that I started working in dynamics with built a platform, were hardcore. They were there from the very beginning. Like, literally, my old boss was one of the original engineers on the dynamics platform. So I was in the middle of it from the start. Sorry, what were you going to say?
No, carry on. We'll come back to that one.
Yeah. And so I was working with MVPs, and they were talking about what they had to do. And I never really thought that I would have the time to do it. And then about a year and a half ago, it was beginning of last year, I saw the 365 Saturday event, and I thought, that's really cool. How do I get that to the US? And I emailed Raz, and I guess Dallas had just been set up. So I went down there and I started talking to everybody involved. I, had followed Julie Ack for quite a while and got to meet her, and I met Jordy and Raz and several others, and Ulrich, and we got to talking, and I thought, this is a great community, and I want to be a part of it. So about 2 weeks later, I met Michael Oakes, and we got to talking. He and Aiden Keskela were helping organize the 365 event we did in DC. And I just started approaching it like, okay, well, what does it mean to be an MVP? So I started looking at the activities, and I thought, this is a community I want to be a part of, because it seems like it's very tight knit, and the attitude and the passion is the word I've heard from many people. It's contagious, right? You talk about the TED Talks. I worked on one of the first TED Talks in our area, and it was contagious. You wanted to do more. You wanted to learn. You wanted to share. And so I just took the approach of, I'm going to start contributing. I'm going to do some events. I'm going to attend some events. I'm going to speak, and I'm going to start putting together, some open source code. And that's kind of the mechanism I used. That was my contributions that got me in. And then just being active in the community and organizing the stuff was how I got in. And it's paid off. I mean, it really both ways. I mean, I got the award, which I'm very happy about. And as I said, double-edged sword. Now I'm panicking. But it's also been, I've learned a ton, from both professional, technical side of things. And, it's just been great all around, and just meeting everybody. The community's been fantastic. So that's kind of how I got here. It was kind of a conscious effort, and it just worked out.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. As in, I like it that, you got involved in events. It seems a great way to, raise your profile, right. And do some great contribution that help a lot of people.
Well, and at the same time, think about the people you get to meet. We did the one in DC last year, and we're coming up on another one in September again. And just sitting in the room with all these people that I've been following for years, this is before the award, I was a little bit starstruck. But then you realize, like, wow, they have the same questions that I do. It's really a nice confidence boost, as well as, man, I just learned like 10 new things that I want to go work on. So it's awesome. And, again, the people that come out on these events, the community events, they give their weekend up or a day up, and they come in and, they want to learn something. And the other side of teaching things and presenting, I feel, and this works for me, is if I have to teach it, I want to make sure I understand it. And if I have to explain it to somebody, you're obviously preaching to the choir on this one. I have to think of a different perspective for almost, not everybody, but everybody thinks a little bit differently. And if I have to explain it 3 different ways, so 3 different people understand it, that really gives me a handle on what I know. And oh man, I really need to go learn more about it, kind of. So all around, it's been great for the profile, as well as just learning tons of stuff.
So good. I see in your history that you worked for Ascentium at one point. I did.
That's how I got started in Dynamics.
So were you like working for Jason Hunt and people like that?
Exactly. Aaron Elder is who I was talking about earlier. Jason and Aaron Elder. When I first started, I knew nothing about Dynamics. I came from a custom development background, and my interview, I had to tell them, like, the only experience I had with Dynamics is my old company not being able to install it properly, because they couldn't get 1.2 to work. And so I started out working with, and Ross Lotharius was my immediate manager. He was an MVP at the time. And, who else can you learn from? My gosh, it's like talking to Aaron one time on a call, and I'm like, well, how'd you know how to do that? He did something in the system we were doing on-prem Sierra 4 at the time. He's like, well, I wrote the code. So like, oh, okay. So you know what you're doing. Yeah.
So were these chaps all part of iCommunicate?
Exactly. So Jason and Aaron and a few others went with iCommunicate over to Microsoft. And I think they left Microsoft, I believe it was right before the V4 release, because I started right as 4 came out. So I think they went back into the consulting world, they went back to a company called Invoke, which was acquired by Ascentium. And so that's where that whole crew came from.
Wow. Interesting times. I'm trying to get in touch with one of the original founders of iCommunicate.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And I've met Jason years ago, early in my career, when he was still working for Microsoft at the time. And he had an intriguing story. And, with time, you're like not 100% if you remember what all the facts were. And I wouldn't mind doing a podcast, with those original, 1 or 2 of those original people that kind of started this whole thing off.
Absolutely. Yeah. You see, it's neat to see people talk about the history of it. And I wasn't involved in that. I came in much later, obviously. But like I said, I still count myself spoiled being able to learn from them, see the history. You'd hear the stories like, oh, yeah, well, the reason this one thing is named this way in the SDK is because of blah, blah, blah. Like, that's really neat, and honestly, from the developer perspective, understanding where things come from help you approach new projects and do troubleshooting and all that much better. So yeah, we'll talk offline. Maybe we'll set you up with some of those guys, because I worked with Jason for a bit, and then we went through a couple of acquisitions. It was Invoke was Ascenium, and then Ascenium was acquired by Avanade, and I believe Jason is still there. And the group that I work with, because of the federal work we did, that's how I got into the federal space, is we went over to Accenture, which is joint owner of Avanade. So I've been around the block a little bit.
You certainly have. But you're in your own consulting now, right? You got your own business?
Yeah, it's all me now. One-man show. I count myself, again, very fortunate to be in the area where there's a demand for Dynamics.
Mm-hmm.
It's taken off. I don't know if you've heard of this Power Platform or not. Have you heard about it? Kind of a.
Well, yeah. What is that all about?
it's kind of a thing, and it's taken off, and the government cloud is really finally catching up to the commercial cloud. So there's a lot more opportunity here. And honestly, from the selfish perspective, it's good, because I'll take advantage of the opportunity, but also the platform is being adopted. And from I want to see things run more efficiently, it's great. So that's one thing that, we go in and it's nice. I'm doing business, and yes, I want business, but I also want to see my customers do well. And my customer, if that's the federal government, I'm a taxpayer, and I want to see them do well. So it's been really nice.
Yeah, well, that's so cool, and what a great journey. I haven't come across many people apart from yourself and Mike and as Aidan that work in that space, right? You all live pretty close by, is that right?
Yeah, exactly. And now Kylie just got on board too. She's in the area, so that's awesome. And yeah, it's even worked with Abe Saldana for a while. He was awarded a few months ago, and he worked at Microsoft, and we worked together. And it's a small world. It's funny how many people you meet who are like, oh, didn't we work together on such and such project? And but yeah, I've been very fortunate in my circumstances. The opportunities kind of put right in front of me, so I couldn't count myself luckier.
Nice. So what's your advice to newcomers or people wanting to become an MVP? What's your recommendation?
Honestly, it's funny. We talked about this at the summit, and my recommendation was just put yourself out there. One of the things I mentioned earlier, I struggled with looking at whenever Ross and Aaron were MVPs and doing a lot of the work. I thought, man, either it's a confidence issue. We're like, well, I'm not sure. I don't know if I know enough. Or it's like, well, people don't really want to hear what I have to say. And that's totally not true. So don't be shy. Put yourself out there. Again, you're a walking example of it, of just putting things out there. Some people will love it. Some people won't really, get much from it, but share, and you'll be amazed at the reception you get and how much you'll learn by doing it. And I think just doing that, whether it's a podcast, whether it's putting a YouTube channel together, whether it's open source software, doing that, I think will put you out there, and that'll open up the doors to really put yourself in a place to get the nomination. And then other than that, just talk to people, go out and do some presentations, go seek advice, go talk to people, and ask for ideas and how to share. I think that was what really worked for me. I was working with Michael and Aidan, I got the insider track on what the MVPs do, but they also gave me a lot of advice on it. And those were the things we did, is, just got out and started sharing.
I love it. What are you going to be doing in Orlando? I take it you're going to be at the summit?
Yeah. Actually, I'm pretty excited. I got 2 sessions accepted. One of them is on building XRM Toolbox plugins, or I should say tools. Jonas corrected me. And then another one is on working with liquid templates. I've been working on portals for the last year or two, and doing a talk on working with liquid templates in the portal solution.
Nice.
So more of the development track, yeah.
Yeah. And have you? What are your thought of all the new portal stuff that's just come out?
It's cool. It's very cool. I'm really, really looking forward to the Power Portal, because the big challenge, and again, especially in the federal space where they're counting nickels, right? Not having to have a full customer engagement instance to do a portal, that's going to be a game changer for a lot of people.
So let me get this right. Are you saying that people can build solutions on the Power Platform without using Dynamics 365?
I think so.
Well, isn't that?
Yeah. No, that was honestly, it's funny, like about a year and a half ago, that was the hearing that customer engagement is a power app. That was, I think Charles Amana is the one that said it in the one talk we were going to. They do the tech summit now. It evolved with 5 different names. I think it was Ignite in DC last year. I was like, okay. Then the light bulb went off. I'm like, that's really cool. And understanding that the shift now to have the data model apps or the model driven apps, the model driven apps that's XRM. That's really what it is. And now I'll be curious to see the licensing. I'll be following you and everybody to find out what the licensing means, because that's a nightmare to understand for me personally. But being able to say, I don't want a portal, but I don't want to have all this customer service stuff. I don't need it. I just want to put a portal out from organization. I think that's going to be enormous. That's going to be a big hit for them. Big deal.
Totally agree. It's great times to be involved in this community, but we've smoked our time already. And so let's just do a couple of wrap up. What's the best piece of tech you've got?
Something I've built or worked on, or the platform?
Nah, hardware. Like, do you have the most amazing mouse, or do you have the most amazing Stream Deck, or what is it?
No, I'm not a hardware guy like you. I get made fun of for my mouse. That's the one thing I will say. I use a trackball from Logitech, and I get made fun of every time somebody sees it. Like
the one with the old ball in it?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's awesome. I've had it for like 20 years.
I was going to say, take it out or something. Wow.
Everybody looks at me like, are you crazy? How do you even use that? So it's cool to me. I think it's cool.
Nice. And it works on glass.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Nice. Brilliant. What's the number one used app on your phone?
I'd probably say mail, sadly, email. But I've actually been trying to not use my phone as much. So I've been trying to put it down and not stare at it so much. But I use mail too much. I should not sit and stare at my email as much.
So you still use email, right? I thought, like the fax, nobody is using email anymore. I thought it was all done on WhatsApp or
Oh yeah. WhatsApp is pretty cool. I used that at the summit. That was actually really nice.
Yeah. In Europe, everybody kind of lives off WhatsApp because it's not tied to your phone number per se, like it is. But it means if you changed your phone number, you still got your WhatsApp account and your connections and things like that.
Yeah, it's cool. And the photo sharing and all that was pretty slick. I got some funny, probably embarrassing photos of people, which I'm going to save and use later.
Yeah, use for leverage.
That's right.
I love it. Yep. James, it's been awesome speaking to you. If people want to connect with you online, where's the best place for them to find you?
Just check out my website, futuresconsulting.com. It's futures with a Z.
Hey, thanks for listening. Each week, I feature a Microsoft MVP to talk about their journey to becoming an MVP and anything related to the Power Platform, Dynamics, that type of thing. We kind of uncover their experience, so hopefully you can learn and maybe become an MVP yourself. Feel free to check out my YouTube channel at youtube.com/NZ365guy, where I've been running a series on how to become an MVP. Come give you some tips to kind of get you on that journey. Anyhow, full show notes can be found at nz365guy.com/123. See you next week.